Good evening, everyone. I am Lena Cisco, and tonight we are profiling Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, a cult-like marketing company that marketed self-improvement programs. I'm joined tonight with my fellow profilers, Janine Driver, Susan Ibitz, and Michelle Dresbold, and together we are the Profiler Task Force. And although our subscribers know who we are, for those of you watching us for the first time, we're going to go around the horn and give a short little introduction as to who we are. So, Susan Ibitz, why don't you kick it off?
Hi, everyone. My name is Susan Ibitz. I'm a human behavior hacker. Some people hack computers. I hack humans. And to make it short, I love to collect skulls and spiders. And my specialty is face reading profiler who combine all the specialties on behavior. And I can find about the picture. Michelle, tell me about you.
Hi, my name is Michelle Dresbold, and I'm a handwriting expert. I basically specialize in three things. The first one is handwriting identification. That might be who wrote an anonymous letter or who forged something. The second thing is threat analysis, just how dangerous a writer is. And the fourth thing is personality profiling, which means I can tell everything about a person's personality from their handwriting. And Janine?
I'm the body language expert and also focus on emotional intelligence and decision-making. And it connects to how you move your body. It's called a behavioral fingerprint. What's your behavioral fingerprint saying?
Lena, tell us about you.
All right, so I am a former Navy Intel officer intelligence and a former Marine Corps certified interrogator. I did interrogate members of Al-Qaeda and Taliban down in Gitmo shortly after 9/11. And I have been interrogating and interview for law enforcement, criminal cases, civil cases since. I have been training law enforcement personnel, government agency personnel, and the military since 2003. And I am so lucky to join these incredible women in the Profiler Task Force. So let's get into tonight's episode. Tonight, we're going to increase your awareness and educate you about people and groups of people who are very persuasive and who have the ability to persuade you to think and act the way they want to, even if it goes against your own moral code. Cult leaders like the one we're discussing tonight force their subjects into compliance and beliefs through coercive measures. Some people call it brainwashing. By definition, brainwashing consists of techniques that typically involve isolation, living in a commune-like setting, having the followers follow very strict regimens around sleeping, eating, working. Some of it involves torture. Some of it involves sleep deprivation. There's also a rewards and punishment system involved. So sometimes these cult leaders have this godlike complex because they believe and see themselves as a god. If you guys ever remember Philip Zimbardo or recognize that name, he was, or he still is, a professor at Stanford, and he is infamous for the Stanford prison experiment. And if you haven't seen it, I highly recommend you look it up. In his experiment, he talked about things and he wrote a book on it called The Lucifer Effect. And he talked about when moral people commit immoral acts. And for those of you who are our Patreon ambassadors, if you are joining our happy hour tonight, I'm going to share some of that with you. And I'm actually going to talk about what happened about Abu Ghraib or in Abu Ghraib in Iraq in the prison, the torture and atrocities and how it directly relates to tonight's show. So ladies, thank you so much for joining us. And I am getting excited to dive right in. And we're going to first hear from Michelle in regards to Keith Raniere's handwriting. But before we hear from Michelle, I know that you guys like timelines, right? So how about I give you some background information with a timeline? I did a lot of research on this case and I dug through tons of articles and videos and I got some juicy information, the highlights that I think that you will be interested in. So before I share my screen, I just want to talk a little bit about brainwashing, right? Is there such a thing? Well, there's a lot of debate and there's a lot of debate whether or not it truly exists and if it can be used in a criminal defense. There was an article that I found in 2002 in Slate that said There's good empirical evidence to shore up early claims about brainwashing, primarily in studies done from former POWs, where prisoners could indeed have their minds and values shaped by their captors. So we are not psychologists here at the Profile Task Force, and we can't tell you whether or not brainwashing is legitimate, but why don't you have a look for yourself? And we're going to talk about Keith Raniere and the devil inside, and you can decide whether or not you believe in brainwashing. So let's go look at that timeline and background information. Okay, so our profile tonight, Keith Raniere, the founder of NXIVM, a multi-level company or sex cult that offered personal and professional development seminars through its executive success programs, otherwise known as ESPs. Is that ironic? I don't know. So here's some interesting specs, who he was and who he came to be. So it is reported that when Raniere was a teenager, he opined that men were naturally polyamorous and women were naturally monogamous. Through the 1980s, it is also reported that he was fascinated by Scientology and neuro-linguistic programming, or NLP. The Guinness Book of World Records cites Raniere for being one of 3 people in the world with an IQ superior to the rest of humanity. It is too bad that he used his power for evil instead of good. There are numerous claims and evidence that he has had sex with minors and kept child pornography. And then finally, in 1984, Times Union reported that Raniere, at the age of 24, had sex with a girl named Gina Melita, and she was 15. When she ended the relationship, she introduced Raniere to one of her girlfriends, also called Gina, but this is Gina Hutchinson. And Raniere engaged in a sexual relationship with Gina. Gina ended up quitting school and following Raniere and actually working for one of his first companies. And so that's where I'm going to begin this timeline. So let's take a look. So in 1990, Raniere founded Consumers Byline Incorporated, and that was the company that Gina worked at. And also during this time, according to a judicial statement, Raniere convinced a 12-year-old girl to have sex with him. And again, this is according to reports. In 1993, his company shuts down. In 1994, Raniere created another multi-level marketing and selling company, and that one was National Health Network. And it ended up ending in closing in 1999, but the year prior to that is really where this story begins. So in 1998, Raniere meets Nancy Salzman, and together they create NXIVM. Nancy was an expert NLP therapist, and Keith decided that he would be called Vanguard and Nancy would be called Prefect. And apparently these titles came from Keith's favorite arcade game, which the destruction, and I have to read this, which the destruction of one's enemies increased one's power. That sounds great, doesn't it? In 2002, Raniere and Salzman recruit Claire Bronfman and her sister, and they are heirs to the Seagram's fortune. So that's a lot of money. And these sisters get their father to actually take a seminar in the ESP program. And it was a year after they had joined. And then shortly after that, their father said, you know what? This is a cult. And he started to segregate from NXIVM. In August 2002, Gina Hutchinson, remember her? Resumed contact with Raniere, and she began participating once again, or the first time actually, in one of NXIVM's ESP programs. In October 11th, so this is just a few months after August when Gina starts the ESP. October 11th, 2002, Gina Hutchinson is found dead with a gunshot wound to her head, and her death was ruled a suicide. And in February 6th, something critical happens, and I'm going to read this for you guys. Kristen Snyder, who was also a member of NXIVM and attending one of the ESPs, was last seen leaving the NXIVM seminar in Anchorage, Alaska. She claimed she had become pregnant with Raniere's child. Now, a couple of days later, on February 8th, her vehicle was found 120 miles away in Seward, Alaska. Police recovered a note that read this, and I'm going to read it. I attended a course called Executive Success Programs based out of Anchorage, Alaska, and Albany, New York. I was brainwashed and my emotional center of the brain was killed/turned off. I still have feeling in my external skin, but my internal organs are rotting. I am sorry, life. I didn't know I was already dead. May we persist into the future. And then there was a separate note that accompanied that note, and that note said, no need to search for my body. A witness at Raniere's 2019 trial testified that after Kristen Snyder disappeared, Raniere paid $24,000 to obtain the password to her email account. That is suspicious behavior. So let's go on. We will now go to 2005. According to that same trial in 2019, in 2005, Raniere allegedly raped a 15-year-old girl called Camila. And apparently they engaged in a 12-year relationship. Camila said this: Mr. Raniere expected her to be available for sex at all hours and for her to weigh less than 100 pounds and directed her to get an abortion. And she also attempted suicide. So we moved to 2005, and between them or 2005 and 2007, Raniere lost a lot of money with NXIVM. And so he went to the Brofman sisters and they offered up a lot of their inheritance to support Raniere and NXIVM. And in May 6, 2009, according to an article by Rob Hagendorn, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, the Dalai Lama and NXIVM Revisited, and that was the title of the article. This is what he stated. In early 2009, the World Ethical Foundation's consortium canceled the Dalai Lama's scheduled appearance to speak on behalf of NXIVM in Albany, New York, scheduled for April 19th. So Raniere, Nancy Salzman, Sarah, and Mark Vicente traveled to India to meet with the Dalai Lama. They convinced him to come and speak again, and he does so on May 6, 2009. The Dalai Lama additionally wrote the foreword to Raniere's book, and that is The Sphinx and the Thelesipia, and I hope I'm pronouncing that right. Thelesipia, ironically enough, because I had to look this up, I also had to look up the pronunciation, is Greek for a siren, right? Which symbolizes what? Temptation, desire, and risk. Very odd that the Dalai Lama would write a foreword to a book that has in the title something to do with temptation, desire, and risk. Because I may be wrong here, but isn't that exactly what Buddhism goes against? So I find that very odd. In 2009, there's some members leaving NXIVM because they are concerned about unethical practices and the alleged abuse of Raniere's leadership status to sexually manipulate women in the organization. And then November 2010, the New York Post reported the existence of a video in which Raniere is heard telling two followers this: I've had people killed because of my beliefs or because of their beliefs. Not sure I would boast about that, but he's definitely aware. And in 2011, Tony Natalie filed documents in a federal court alleging that she had been repeatedly raped by Raniere. June 5th, 2017, Frank Parlato, he is a reporter, was the first to report on that secret society called DOS, where the Latin translation means something as dominating slaves, right? So you had slave women over, or dominant females over slave women, if you can picture that. And these people and the women in that group were also hot branded with Keith Raniere's initials and Allison Mack's initials, although it was said to be a symbol. January 18, 2018, a search warrant was issued for Raniere's email account. March 2018, Raniere is arrested in Mexico by Mexican authorities in Puerto Vallarta. Apparently, they were at a luxury villa, all hiding out, where they were attempting to have a planned group sex session. When the police arrived, they had Raniere hiding out in a closet, and they arrested him. And on May 7th, 2019, Raniere's federal trial begins. Prosecution witnesses included Lauren Salzman, NXIVM filmmaker Mark Vicente, victims. And then we pop up to June 19th, 2019. The jury finds Raniere guilty on all charges, and you can read all of those charges. And then we come to October 27th, 2020, which is not. Raniere is sentenced to 120 years in federal prison. He was convicted of sex trafficking, racketeering, sexual exploitation of a child, and human trafficking. The judge also ordered him to pay a $1.75 million fine. So that is the background on Raniere and a little bit of information for you guys. And now let's get into our profile analysis, and we're going to hear from the profilers. So Michelle, we'll kick it off with you.
Okay, let's look at Keith's handwriting. Now, when you first look at his signature, it actually looks pretty readable. It has a K with a little loop on the left-hand side, a little like Janine does. That means the person wants to know everything that's going on around him. We can see the EITH, RANIE, and then what happens? We can't read it. Looks like a weird squiggle with a point. As I've mentioned before, when things end with pointed arrows, that's a danger zone. But here, when we look at this name, we think we can read it. Comes off pretty simple. Oh, I can read most of it. And then boom, surprise at the end. So that's a little indicative of Keith Raniere's handwriting. I want to show you a few very interesting things. Look at this very closely. It looks simple, but I'm going to show you something. Let's go to the next slide. What I did here is I took the T out of context. Now, I have a chapter in my book, Sex, Lies, and Handwriting, which is called Cruel and Unusual Letters. If you look at that, quote, T, it looks like a symbol. What kind of symbol? Well, in the book, I talk about this. It's called a devil's fork. It looks like the fork that a devil uses. Now, I compared it to two different people. We have the happy face killer next to it, which we can see the devil fork in his handwriting. This devil's fork only shows up in very dangerous people's handwriting. And what it really means is, I didn't do anything. There could have been a devil inside of me that did some stuff, but I didn't do anything. Let's look at another one. Now, I found this very interesting. I took the T and I put it upside down. Do you notice that it looks very similar to the handwriting where I highlighted up at the top? Do you see that? That's a devil's fork. This is in Vladimir Putin's handwriting. And so you see that symbolism doesn't matter what language, it will show up. Now, I gave a lecture and somebody in the audience was from Russia. And I just wanted to make sure. I said, is that a letter in Russian that I'm missing? Because it's, I compared it to the devil's fork. He goes, there's no letter in Russian that looks like that. So there, I just found that comparison very, very interesting. And I wanted to tell you just a very quick story about a devil's fork. I mean, you will find this in Ted Bundy's handwriting, Casey Anthony's handwriting. And I had a client, a woman who came to me. She had a PhD. She sent me the handwriting of her boyfriend. She said, should I go out with this guy? And I looked at it and I saw the devil's fork, and that's all I had to see. And I said, no, run away, go away, make any excuse, leave town, buy a Doberman Pinscher, get away from this guy. Eventually, she called me back. She had been going to a psychologist, and she said, I broke up with the guy. And my psychologist told me if I had continued to go out with this man, she was going not to see me anymore because she thought this man would eventually kill me. And I wanted a second opinion. I'm like, okay. And then she said, and he's dating another woman now. I said, oh, poor woman, So let's go to the next slide. Now, I found this very interesting. This is from an article by Art Voice. And this is the branding that they actually put on the women who they made slaves. They branded them. Now, It looks just like a brand, but if you look closely, you can actually see initials in it. If you first look at the first one, and that's in one direction, the big tall thing is, you see the A? Now look underneath the A and go up, down, that's the M. And that's Alice and Mac's initials. Now, if we turn that same symbol, we rotate it, you can then see the K. And then if you look in that little side of the K, you will see an R. So there's the branding initials. Now, on Art Voice, they said that Keith Raniere had said, yes, my initials are in there, but there's other symbolism, but they didn't see the other symbolism. Let's look at the next slide. Actually, this slide is just the same, except I don't want you to look at the initials. I want you to look and see if you can see anything else, which is their secret symbolism. Now, before I ask the profile task force what they see, I would like you out in YouTube land to please look at this. Look at the first one very carefully. Now look at the second one very carefully. And I want you to try not to see the initials and see if you can see any other symbolism in it. Are you looking? Okay. Now, I want to ask either Lena or Susan out there, do either one of you see anything in these, anything other than the initials?
Lena, do you want to go first or you want me to go first?
You can go first.
Okay. I spent this week reading your book, Michelle, and learning scary things about handwriting. And I've been looking for a Christmas card from the last 5 years and erasing people from my Facebook. Thank you very much. One of the things that I noticed is on the second picture, it looked like at the end, and we're going to be pointing this, like it's a man standing on their feet, one of the knee bending, and a big phallic symbol, let's say the name penis. And I see a lot of penis symbols on the signature. Am I sick or is the guy sick and I'm reading it?
Oh, no, that you were seeing exactly the secret symbol in that one. Lena, the first one is much harder. Can you by any chance see it? If not, I might have to go back to Susan. And then again, maybe no one will see it in the first one. Look at that AM, but don't look at the AM. Do you see any symbolism in there? It's hidden inside.
So it almost looks like someone on their back, but I could be far-fetched.
Well, it could be, but I'm going to give you a hint.
Okay.
Look at the crossbar, not the top one, the middle crossbar, and then look at, quote, the legs inside the crossbar. Don't look at the part of the M as legs and look at the crossbar as arms. And
okay, so I don't know if I can say this on YouTube, but it looks like spread eagle, almost like a woman's legs are open.
Okay, you're definitely right. But there's one more thing going on here. Susan, can you see it?
It's a man standing the arm, standing in the two open legs, and his member is handing between the legs.
Well, you do have phallic symbols on your mind, but what it really is the arms are spread, holding on, bondage, and the legs of the woman are running but spread. So the first one, if you look very closely, you actually can see a little face, arms with a little face with legs. The one leg is up and bent, the other leg is straight. And so that's the bondage of the woman. And the second one is the phallic symbol of the man. So that's the secret inside the initials.
So it's a female, male.
The first, under the A, is a female who's bonded, strapped to the two parts of the A, her legs apart, her head down. and the second one is a phallic symbol of a man. I've also had a number of cases. I mean, these are scary cases, but where, let's say somebody is dead and somebody has carved something on that body. And it's my job to look at it. And a lot of it is like a Rorschach test. You really just have to say, well, I'm seeing this and this and this. And there's a reason somebody makes a symbol in a person or on a person, or in general in graffiti or anything. And you don't always know the answer. There isn't always, yes, this is this. So you have to kind of brainstorm. And so I've had cases similar to this, but with unfortunately dead bodies that somebody has branded. So, but I just found this quite fascinating about the secret symbols within the symbols.
Michelle, you just blew my mind. Wait till you hear my analysis. So viewers out there, you all know that we do not collaborate or coordinate when we do our analysis. We literally come together at filming and hear each other's analysis for the first time. Michelle said this, it wasn't me, it was the devil inside me. I want you all to remember that when I get into statement analysis. Michelle, yeah, it's going to be quite amazing to hear. Yay. All right, so let's go with questions. Susan, do you have any questions for Michelle?
Yeah, again, I've been reading your book, Sex, Lies, and Sex. I say it right?
Sex, Lies, and Handwriting.
Sex, Lies, and Handwriting. I'm
See, horrible sex with. Is on your mind. What can I say?
I'm switching names all the time. But
more sex.
Yeah. Okay, that's too much for TMI. Maybe for the happy hour, but. The first one, when you ask, I apparently get the second one. For me, it was difficult to find a female symbol on the first one. It looked like more a man on a spread eagle, like initially Lena says, with the legs spread and their member in the middle. And can you explain why it's more feminine than masculine? And if it's a compound question. So second question, it's anything to do with my own personal bias or learning that avoid me to see what you've seen and maybe can help the audience to see it next time?
Okay. Well, let me just start with saying that you're not wrong. I mean, it's like a Rorschach test. And I am just from my experience, what I see and how I interpret symbols. I could see a little closer version of it, and the face looked like there's a little teeny face in there, and it looked like a female. And knowing a little bit about the case sometimes helps. And knowing that we have one symbol that's male and one symbol that's female, and the fact that the female is in the initials of the female and that the male figure is in the initials of the male. So it's sort of taking it one step up. You know, it's, quote, could it be a man strapped? Maybe. I mean, there is no, I can't ask him and say 100% is this. I'm just going from my interpretation from seeing so many different things. I don't want to say it's similar because everything is different. But the positioning and the bondage is what made me believe it's female.
Thank you. And the second one is, do you think anything regarding my own bias or my education or what I do that didn't allow me to see as clear, even though when you were explaining it? And is any tip or advice for maybe somebody of an audience who have the same perception, like I cannot see the female male on this?
Okay. I mean, as I said, there is no 100% right and 100% wrong. We can't help but to bring some of our own background. When I look at something, if it's a symbolism or a code, what I try to do, I never look at it when I'm tired, because when you're tired, I can't see. I open it up or look at the information when I'm fresh. And maybe what I do is just write a list, a ton, maybe it could be this. Maybe I see 15 things in there. I don't ever, what's it called? I don't censor myself. I don't go, it must be this. I write it down And then I go back, I look at it again, and I go, or if I'm working on a case, example, with a police or an FBI agent, I go, here are some things I see. Does any of this make sense to you from the case? So I think it's not wrong to say, wait, I see a man or I see a woman. Some of these things, there, especially there is no 100% one right answer. In this kind of case where they designed it for a certain reason, there is more of an answer. But a lot of times you do have to let your brain be free. So if I were working and I brought you in to help me, you could give hey, I'm seeing this and this, and we would write that down, because you may be right. So I'm trying to see what I just bring in. I try to start off as what I call clean and clear without any bias to look at it.
Thank you.
Michelle, so when you flipped the symbol sideways, the first thing that I saw was the K. And I was like, well, obviously this is Keith. How did these women not know that was K for Keith, right? Because it's just what I saw. And I did see the male figure standing, but when you flipped it the other way, all I could see was this A. And my mind was so blocked by that, I couldn't get beyond seeing the A. And I know you said, don't see the initials right now. I couldn't stop it though.
Right. That's why sometimes you have to kind of close your eyes and go, lay down your head, look at it. I call clean, or turn it around. Maybe take that same symbol, like we saw the AM and then but maybe turn it one more direction. Maybe you see something else. So you have to sort of keep turning it so you forget to see the A or forget to see the K.
Yeah.
It happened the same in face reading when people says, you want me to send you the pictures in advance? No. So I block the person when I'm ready to read it. I block my bias. I block everything, close my eyes and go. And in 90 seconds, I disconnect the person. And everything that I remember are the things that stood out. But I always say there are 3 reasons face reading goes wrong. The reader is tired. Normalization, that you're so used to do that or see that you don't pay attention, or because you're fighting because somebody's criticizing you, so you don't want to recognize that feature in yourself until somebody explains like it's nothing wrong or it's wrong to have it. But it's happened the same, Michelle. I don't need to overthink it. As soon as you overthink, and that's what I teach my students, when you're thinking too much, you're missing the reading. What you see is what you get. And I should say that was my mistake. I was overthinking because I look for the second picture. Thank you for helping me be less biased on this.
So all of that actually segues into my realm of interrogation and interviewing as well, because we have to go in as interviewers and be completely unbiased. And so the information that we know, or people who have told us, or even previous interrogators or interviewers may come in and say, oh, this person's guilty because of, I'm like, I got to put it all aside, dump it, and go in with a very objective lens. So easy for me to do as an interrogator, but Michelle, in your world, when I looked at that symbol, it was difficult for me. And it's like, I'm seeing the A.
Right.
Brilliant. And
thank you.
Because you're gonna be pretty amazed. Okay, so let's go next with Susan Ivitz, our face reading expert. Susan, I'm dying to hear what you see in Keith's face.
Okay, we have been talking about symmetry and why it's important to keep paying attention to this. If we saw this face, you see just a man. Some women can say it is attractive. Some women can say it is not. Some men says it is disgusting. Just the normal dude next door that you're walking on the street. Now, we're going to start talking about different ways to do symmetry. Now, if we do a triangle, we see certain part of the face kind of blending together. But now we can start seeing that the middle of the face have a deviation. So the second way to look for symmetry, and I'm going to explain why, is where your face starts and when your face ends. We have 3 zones. The upper zone is the thinking. The second zone is the feeling. And the third part is the doing. You can see without an expert eye, there is a balance between the 3 of them. And you would say this person is balanced. No, Actually, you have demons fighting all the time between what you think, what you feel, and what you want to do. Why? When you don't have a dominate, what happened? All of them are on the same cup. So are fighting all the time. Like when you put water and oil, they're fighting all the time to see what is going on the top. That would happen with Raniere. He is fighting his demons all the time. Now we're going to start seeing the difference, and be ready, because do you think the other faces we see are asymmetric? This is like Frankenstein. Now we divide the face in two. And now what we choose is to divide it and see, okay, let's make a line between the middle of the face and the ear on the left, on the right, that because we're flipping. So it's the left of your monitor. I copy that line, I multiply it, and you see the difference is fall back, meaning that we find the first asymmetry. So if you cannot flip images because you don't have a program or you don't have an app, that is the simple way. Lines on a Word document. When people says, how you doing? You have a program? Like, no, it's simple. You can do it in any picture. Now, you see this face? Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
These are the two left sides. Those are the two right sides.
Mm-hmm.
This is the same person. The only thing we have is we hire an IT person to design a program who just divide the face, just where the face we define, and put it together. It looks like it's two different people. So remember when we talked last week about the Edinburgh studies and studies of Harvard about asymmetry and how unstable a person is? This has to do. I want to point two things only. You see the thin nose? You see the thick nose, you see the small chin, you see the big chin. You want to see what I mean? I can see, Lena, maybe people don't see it, but I can see your jaw near to the table like, what? Yeah,
This is
no
crazy.
trick. It's no trick. We haven't modified anything. We don't alter the picture. We do what we do in any face reading when we have a client and when we're teaching. That's what asymmetry mean. And what I so stress on the fact, look on faces the way the faces are talking to you. So if I just divide it, suppose that we are trying to do that at home, make a block, a square block, and change in sides. You see? Now you can still start see the difference, you see? Now your eyes keep training. So that is a good way to train your eye on the differences. Now, he had something when he was growing up that never changed. I never ever read kids below the age of 18. But in this case, the features are going to mark was a significant that he was always egotistical and assumed that his reality is the reality for everybody else. And I see you, Lena, going ballistic. You see the ears?
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't have any inner outer reach, no outer cup. That meaning that he's egotistical. He may assume that the truth he see and he believe is universal. It sounds like a cult. Like every cult, Johnstown, Waco, like my truth is universal. What I'm saying is the God word. Whatever is your God, in this case, he was God for the other ones. Another, internal and intuitive, imagine and created. But you know what is the challenge? Boredom. He felt bored, so he was experimenting. That's the reason he changed women all the time, and he used new victim. Next, bored. I get bored to you. I'm going to the next victim. Is one of the indications. Now, guess what? Who have the same? When you're looking for victims of cult, you need to look on the ears. I'm fascinated with ears, and people go ballistic. Why? I would say like 45% of my class has to do with ears, because we can read 14 things who has to do with your personality. Ears are my antenna. So how I intake information, if I intake information thinking that what you're telling me is the only reality, because of the only reality I take, I'm not going to listen to my family and the other person or the other people saying, this is not true. When you see somebody so stubborn and you says, don't see it, look on the ear. on the inner ridge and the outer ear part of the ear, because if you keep saying no, no, and they say yes, it's because they're not capable to take the information you give them. Why? Because they have their own egotistical way to see the world. Is clear, girls? Or I'm losing you at this point?
Oh, I see it. Clear as day.
Okay. Now, he have a straight chin. You see? You can draw a line. Goes all of their goals. It's about his goals. It's about what he want, how he want it. It's my way or the highway. He have his own goals and principles. And we talk about goals and principles. It's like, this is a serial cult crazy dude. Well, his goals and his principles, again, we're talking about an egotistical person. He thinks his goals and principles are okay. The worst part is the first follower and all the followers who come after who think the same. Something that we found in Dana and we found in Drew is, remember about the eyes? We talk abundant eyelid, a strong need for intimacy. When you have a strong need for intimacy, you need to be feeding that intimacy all the time. I need people to adore me. I need people to be with me. They're bond with partners all the time. There's the kind of people that is dating all the time. They cannot be alone. And sometimes says, why you don't live in your partner? Because I don't want to be alone. Look on the eyelids. Eyelids has to do with the level of intimacy, has nothing to do with sexual. It's how we interact with others. I don't have any eyelids. I'm super independent. Half eyelids, when you can put a little pinky finger, they can balance. In my case, I'm laser focused in my job. I don't have time for intimacy, so I get away from everyone. They're loyal on their relationships based on what is the concept of relationship they have. I know polygamists and people who are, there are different ways to do it, like polygamous or threesome, and they live 2 to 1. I don't know how, I'm not into that. And all of them have abundant eyelids. Why? Because it's the concept for them. What is my relationship and what is my loyalty to my relationship? I'm swinger, but I'm going with my wife, or I'm going with my husband to a swinger bar. So I'm loyal to my partner because we agree to go together. But always pay attention in the level of eyelids you can see and the level of intimacy. Another thing, you see the flat eyelid? When you squint in your eyes, it's because you don't trust what you've seen. He never trusts anyone. He wasn't a trust person. Now, what is driving me crazy, and this guy, it was extremely visionary. Let's remember, and you talk about like he was from Amway, he did a fraud before from another company, and he saw the cult and he took ideas from, Scientology to base Amway, how Amway was structured and how in Scientology. He put that together and he was visionary enough to run a cult doing the thing that he was doing for 20 years without being caught. Imagine if this guy would have decided to do with that genius something good. You see it? Those are the visionary lines. Now, last one. Why we have a point here? He have willing to take calculated risk. He was crazy, but not stupid. He knew the risk he was taking until he get gluttony. He was too fed on himself. I get away with this for 20 years. I'm not gonna be caught. Now, what the front tooth, the big front tooth in perspection to the mouth, that means that he was stubborn. And when he make his mind, he doesn't flip the idea. His way or my highway, I have my own reality. I have a egotistical personality. I do it right. I need intimacy. And my perception of intimacy is my reality. Girls, I cannot wait for your questions.
Susan, that was brilliant. Okay, so I have a question I'm dying to ask, but I'm going to let my fellow profilers go first. So I'm going to toss it over to Michelle. Michelle, do you have any questions for Susan?
No, but I really think I have really big eyelids. And I do have one question. I actually do have big eyelids, so I don't have to reevaluate my personality. So what about if you're like Asian? I mean, like different, let's say, different ethnics have different eyelids. So I'm curious about that quickly.
There are three things that I like about face reading profiling. Has nothing to do with age, ethnicity, or sex. And everything has to do with proportions. My nose, maybe in any of your faces, is bigger or smaller than is in my face. So when you look different ethnics, you need to look on the proportions. I have been working in Asia. I have been working with African American. I've been working with any kind of race of culture or whatever you want to put it. And always is proportion. That's the reason I work and I stress so much on the lines. And since I have a program to do the symmetry, I want to show people how to do it at home. So if you measure Raniere eyelids, maybe in my face, it would be huge. But maybe in your face, it's a small compared because you have a big bounded eyelid. You have a dog, you love it, you like to be with people, you like to participate in a group. I'm sure you're missing your maybe Sundays go with your friends, go for tea, for a coffee, to interact with others and work in a group. So it's nothing wrong to the intimacy. It's how you pilot with other things. Is that the way you are, Michelle?
I do like people, and I mean, I can work by myself, but I do like to be around. I'm having a hard time during COVID because I feel like I can't smile at people because I'm always wearing a mask, you know. So I do, and I wouldn't, I am, when I say intimate, I mean, I really am very close to the people I'm close to.
Yeah, so you're more the caring person, maybe the more empathetic person, physically or emotionally with someone.
Right, I would think so, yes.
So
but I do have those big eyelids.
So it had good attribute to have high level of intimacy. They tend to be more empathetic. The problem is, I've been reading for a long time about empathy, and more psychopaths are the most empathetic, like serial killers. Why? Because that's how they attract victim. They show empathy, they show they caring, so they bring you back. So cult, serial killers, and psychopaths, they tend to show to be more empathic with you. Doesn't mean that everybody who's empathetic is going to be, please, let's be clear. But I've been reading that one of the reasons they lure their victims, and some victims were willing to be part of that situation, is because the ones who survive says, he was so nice, so empathetic. It looked like he was looking at me. He was understanding me. Even in an abusive relationship, he understand me. Maybe he hit me because I deserve it. I wasn't a good person.
So Susan, do you think that's true empathy, or do you think that they're just playing it? Okay. All right. So they're just really good at the schmoozing.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying is fake empathy, but you need to be careful when it's too good to be true. And that I took it from talking with psychologists then I work with, like, why it's related. I find the article like empathy and serial killer. Wait, I know a lot of empath, and they explain me that how they utilize empathy, like to be likable, to lure the victim to come to them, because it's like the lion waiting for the victim, is how the cat plays with the mouse. So it's the same concept. I was blown away when I talk and find out, like, I think it was 4 years ago, then I started researching the point. It's like, oh my God, okay, got it.
Janine, do you have any questions for Susan?
Just a quick question, if you can answer it in like 3 sentences, is I have a friend that had an eye lift. Does surgery like an eye lift affect your readings?
The face I see is the face I read. Lena asked me a similar question, and when she was explaining me what her friend did, and says something has changed on her life that is significant, and she become more needy or more need of intimacy, and she put like, how you know? And she explained me the context. So what you're doing with your face is a reflection of something that you're preparing to happen or already happened, and you want to express it. So be careful when you modify your face, because modify your face, you're modifying the GPS to your brain and some train of thoughts that can happen.
And so I just want to throw out there, you guys, that if you are our Patreon ambassador, Susan did a video on that. It's on an eyebrow lift specifically, and it's all for you guys to see. All right. So Susan, my question for you is you talked about when you have that eyelid being needy, not so much intimate, but needing that attention. So is there any correlation between extroverts and introverts?
Yep, it is. I always say I was supposed to be in China now, following a Chinese face reader to go deeper on it. And it's the theory that I haven't proved that if you put a pen in your eye, depending how near your eye is to the pen, it's how extrovert, introvert. But yes, it's a correlation. Oh. The people who have abundant eyelids tend to ask for permission to go with others more around because they like the level of intimacy that, again, can be emotional or physical. So you can like hugging your friends or be with friends.
Back it up. What are you talking about with the pen? I'm not following.
I haven't tested the theory yet. Only saying that I'm in researching that. But since I cannot be around people, I cannot test it. As soon as I get it, I promise.
But what would you research? Like how far away we put the pen from our feet?
If you're not wearing glasses and you put the pen against your eyebrow and your cheek, and if your eye touch the pen, and you cannot open the eye, is because you're an extrovert. But if you can open the eye without any problem, you're an introvert. It's more recluded. You don't want to be seen. You're more introspective. Yeah, Janine, you can open the eyes. I'm testing, but again, I don't like testing online. What I do is I'm going to different places and ask people to collaborate to do it. So that is my next study. Oh. But the level of intimacy has to do with extrovert. They're well-versed, for example, in this situation, to keep a relationship with others. Introverts are having a problem because we are not exercised how to interact with others. So for introverts, it's been really difficult to do it. And you're going to find the most introvert or ambivert, that is when you can navigate both, they have no eyelids or they have only a pinky of the eyelids. Again, proportionally to the face. And I know in the happy hour, we're going to have ton of questions about that. Janine,
all right, I'm moving this train along. So we got to get to Janine, right? She is our body language expert and movement pattern analysis expert. So I'm dying to hear your analysis on Keith Raniere. Have it, sister.
It's not going to be what you think, sister. Listen, I went down the rabbit hole here. Oh my gosh. First of all, I never even heard of this case. I don't have live television. I don't watch the news because when I worked for ATF at the World Trade Center in New York City, I was the public information officer. And before going to work, I'd have to read every single newspaper. I'd be on the train. I had 3 television sets going and a real 3, because liars love to use the number 3. So we'll talk about that in another segment. A real 3 television sets going at all times. The sound would be off, but I'd have to watch it constantly. And so when I left New York City years ago, I said, I'll never be glued to the news. So when we drove in here and I went down this rabbit hole, holy smokes, I'm like, okay, where do I go? Because I'm so big on helping you at home make smarter decisions, because I'm really big on your gut, talking to your brain. For every 1 message from the brain to the gut, there's 8 or 9 messages from the gut to the brain. We're going to go a little different with my segment tonight, and let's dig in. All right, Lena, thank you. I'm keeping my camera off for tonight's segment because I want you to tune in to your auditory information channel, not your visual information channel in my segment tonight. Listen, not that there's not a lot of body language, because we could go deep. If you have not seen this STARS documentary over at STARZ, STARS, check it out. I think they have like 30 days free to try them out. It's called Seduced Inside NXIVM Cult. And there's 4 episodes. Must see if you are a crime watcher, if this is your world, on wanting to keep yourself, your friends, your family, your finances safer. Whoa, this is a must watch. It's with therapists and doctors, pulling apart, how did this happen? How did Keith Raniere intimidate so many people? I wish we had time to go a little deep on how he broke down the resistance of people. He would hold their hands. He would kiss them all the time, everybody. And it became his standard, right? So what happens here is he begins to desensitize people. So it makes sense when he creates this, sex cult, the slave cult within DOS, within his company, his already cult. that people have already begin to be desensitized. They're told things like, stop trusting your gut intuition because that's what's keeping you mediocre. That's keeping you stuck. So we're not going to go there right now. What I want to do is I want to focus on voice, in particular, the tone and pitch of voice. Susan, I love how you said he gets bored easily with this. He's looking for that next victim. We see that with all that kissing that happened, right? It's what's next, what's next. Well, guess what happens? This tone of voice is allowing him to get closer and closer to more and more people and manipulate more people. How does he do it? We're going to explore through a game. So first we're going to do this, and I was on the fence about, do I do a game on this? Because this is such a tough topic that we're talking about tonight. And I believe that we remember things by games, or by, for me, I love expressions like, if you hold your hand versus hold your wrist versus hold your arm versus hold your throat versus hold your head, the higher the hold, more anxiety is told. Or when you steeple people, you intimidate people. So we're going to play a little bit of a game. And we're going to, you at home, put this on pause, get a piece of paper and a pen, and Lena, Michelle, and Susan do the same, and write down A, B, or C. I'm going to have 3 voices play, and you're going to guess which voice does it belong to. Does it belong to voice A, the world's strangest executive coach? That's right, Keith Raniere. Or the little body shop of horrors. Do you remember this guy? That's right, Jeffrey Dahmer. Or does it belong to C, a real nut out there, fear grips young women? Who is this in the 70s, early 80s? That's right, Ted Bundy. So I'm going to play 3 voices. You're going to write down which voice goes to which person, and let's see how you do. I also would like to invite you to pay attention to the tone and pitch of voice. What do they have in similar, with their tone of voice with these three men? Boy, that was a tongue twister.
Something that I feel that I'm in control of, or something that I've come to terms with, because I haven't. It's a moment by moment thing. Sometimes I feel very tranquil, and other times I don't feel tranquil at all.
I'm an interesting person. I'm a controversial person, but most importantly, I'm an unconventional person.
I desensitize myself to it. I don't know. I went to great lengths. I desensitize my.
All right. How did you do? If you said voice number 1 was Ted Bundy, you'd be correct.
Something that I feel that I'm in control of, or something that I've come to terms with, because I haven't. It's a moment by moment thing. Sometimes I feel very tranquil, and other times I don't feel tranquil at all. What's going through my mind right now is to use the minutes and hours that I have left as fruitfully as possible and see what happens. It helps to live in the moment, in the essence that we use it productively.
Voice number 2, Keith Raniere.
I'm an interesting person. I'm a controversial person, but most importantly, I'm an unconventional person.
Voice number 3, Jeffrey Dahmer.
I desensitize myself to it. I don't know. I went to great lengths.
All right. So why do I point out voices here? I think that you would agree that these voices are pretty similar, right? They're not exactly motivating us, right? They're not the motivator where they're firm and exciting and fast-paced and bright sounding, right? They're not really the coach, right? The coach is directive and assertive, right? That affirmative, right? The assertive, that directional. Hey, let's do this. Let's go, go, go. And it's kind of a deeper voice is the coach. I think maybe they're a combination between the educator. The educator is stable, balanced, well-rounded tone of voice, all right? And the colleague, the person you work with, chatty and informational, like we're friends, right? So it's kind of friendly, there's some breath in it. I think it's a combination, especially with Keith. What does this mean for us? Let's look at Keith and listen again to this tone.
I'm an interesting person. I'm a controversial person, but most importantly, I'm an unconventional person.
Right? You can feel that combo between the colleague you work with and the educator. This is what Keith did. See, a lot of hypnotists use different tones of voice. And I'm friends with hypnotists. I myself am trained in neurolinguistic programming, and if you put it in the wrong hands, man, is it dangerous. I'm an NLP life coach. I don't coach. I use it to build rapport. Many hypnotists that I'm friends with will often use a natural, slower, softer voice, a little bit lower on the tone, to induce a hypnotic trance. And this is what Keith's going to do right here with his tone of voice, saying positive things about how he can make a difference in the world. He's creating what's called an anchor to his tone, to his words, to this positive stuff he's saying. And then he uses that for evil. In a minute, I'll show you. First, let's pay attention to the positive anchor.
If we want the world to be less violent, we need to change our values and principles. You can see that if people are devoted to materialism, it takes away from compassion. It increases objectification of people. It leads to more violence, leads to more war. It doesn't have to be that way.
All right, you notice that tone, right? A little softer, a little slower, lower tone, inducing this hypnotic state. It doesn't have to be that way. You have the power to do something different. Now he's going to take that same anchor, that same tone, and say some really crazy stuff. This is not kid-friendly. If your kids are within earshot of what you're about to listen to, please put on your headset or put it on pause and watch it when your kids are in bed. Not kid-friendly. I repeat, not kid-friendly. Here we go.
Next Saturday, we will have a larger group and we will start doing enslavement exercises amongst people. So, no more questions?
Oh my gosh. Next week we'll be doing enslavement, exercises among people. Any questions? Like he's ordering a small fry from McDonald's or, a burrito from Chipotle. This casual conversation that he's talking is hypnotic, and it is where he slides in words like rape and molestation and attacks and all this in slavery. In that same tone of pitch, without a doubt, this is part of his persuasion techniques. Let's listen to the next one. It's going to get progressively more intense. So if this is not your cup of tea, he is going to talk about rape. He's also going to talk about molesting children. You may want to fast forward through my segment.
So here you have these women, and let's suppose these women are representative to you of a gang that's killing your family, and that you feel that if you don't do this, your family's going to die, or people you know are going to die.
Embedded command here, LENA, you probably picked up on it, right? And maybe you at home is if you don't do this, so we can get rid of the words you and don't. The embedded command is do this. So if you don't do this, it's often a pause before the embedded command or the tone or pitch goes up or down. So he's saying, do this or your family will die. This is an embedded command. This is hypnosis getting into the brain. He's sending these secret messages without you even realizing it.
The person that's the victim, self-victimizing, is abusing. The person who is complaining is abusing.
So now he's talking about people who are raped or molested, right? The person who's complaining about it, the person who's talking about it. You are really the person who's re-victimizing yourself. You are the troubled person, right? I mean, listen to the tone and pitch. I'm going to play it again. It is unbelievable. He's just casually saying it. My kids like to play this game. A moron says what? And you look at the kids and what do you say? What? And you're like, the kids are like, I got you, Mom. A moron says what? And you're like, what? I got you. It's a running joke, right? It's the tone and pitch, how it's being delivered. Let's listen to this one again.
The person that's the victim, self-victimizing, is abusing. The person who is complaining is abusing.
So if you complain at all about something bad that's happened, you are the abuser. He is reframing your sense of reality.
You understand how you could rape a baby? I could make it a baby that's very rapeable.
If you weren't sure what he just said, he said about raping a baby, and I can make a baby very rapeable. This is the kind of talk that he would say all the time. And he's saying it with this educating, collegiate kind of tone of voice. There's a website out there with a man by the name of Colin James. He calls it the Colin James method, elevate capability, thrive remotely. And he talks about 4 types of tones of voices when it comes to communication. And I thought I'd give you a sneak peek of what they are. 1 is the motivator. 2 is the educator, 3 is the coach, and 4 is the colleague. The motivator, and we're going to go over this. If you're a Patreon member, we'll go over this in more detail tonight, along with some exercises on when should you change your tone and pitch in a meeting or on a date. What is the ideal voice to get the end result that you're looking for, right? So the motivator. The tone of voice is firm and exciting. It's fast-paced. It's bright, right? Think of that motivating person, Tony Robbins, right? Then over here we have the educator. The educator, it's balanced, it's stable, it's well-rounded. It's as if you're saying the word mum. Say mum 6 times. Mum, 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 mum. It starts the same as it ends, right? That's the educator. Hey, what I need you to do is take that crayon and put it to the paper, and then you're going to color a picture. Okay. Then we have the coach. The coach is affirmative. It's assertive, right? It's directional. It is a deeper tone of voice. Let's go, everybody. Hustle, hustle, hustle. Foot fire. Foot fire. You got this. Okay. Then there's the colleague. The colleague is chatty and informal. The tone is very friendly. Like we're just hanging out. Keith's a combination of both of these. Wouldn't you agree? We'll go deeper into them later tonight in our Patreon. If you're not already a Patreon member, I'm sure there's information below. And I think Lena already mentioned it. If not, she'll talk about it a little deeper and in some strategies on what you can do and when you should tap into these voices. Listen, Keith Raniere wants us to think of butterflies and unicorns and everything's okay, except he's got a whole bunch of bad stuff. He's got people committing suicide, people disappearing. He's got people being raped and molested. I mean, it's an absolute disaster. And he says it all with this cavalier tone of voice. And he's not the only one. You heard Jeffrey Dahmer with a similar tone of voice and Ted Bundy. And I know, Michelle, you brought up Ted Bundy too. So it's so interesting that we're overlapping with what we're talking about once again. So when it comes to the tone of voice and the pitch, know that there's 4 different areas, and understand people like Keith Raniere are saying something so casual in a hypnotic trance-like tone and pitch that it just slides right in to your subconscious and you may not even know it's there. All right, I'm going to talk about Allison tonight in our Patreon. That's my time. Back to you, Lena. Sorry I didn't get time to ask you what you voted for our voices, but we'll find out for you at home. Put your comments below. My name's Janine Driver. I'm your body language expert. Back to you, Lena, and profilers.
Thank you, Janine. You know, all of us feel that gut instinct, and you and I teach this all the time, and I'm sure Michelle and Susan do as well, is that you have to trust it because what you're doing is you're picking up on something that belongs there. So people out there, don't ignore it, investigate it. And I like what Janine says, unpack it and really dig into why you're having that gut feeling. Okay, so here's some statement analysis on Keith Raniere. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about some interesting facts. Number 1, in a speech before the court, Keith Raniere waffled between apologizing and blaming women. Interesting, right? And we're going to see this in his statements in a moment. He also claimed his innocence and said some of the victims were lying, followed by saying that he was deeply sorry and arguing that he did not mean to cause so much pain and anger. Where is this guy's head, right? What's going on? And then let's take a further look to see where all the confusion comes in with what he says. So he states this. You know, one of the things that's most important in our country is the justice system. And although, you know, people can hate me and think I'm an odious type of character. So let's look here. This, you know, we call, it's a filler word, but when people use, you know, and obviously, it's a way for them to convince you to believe them. So we see this filler word and we're wondering, why on earth is he saying this? Here's this guy, apparently he has this amazing IQ and he has to use filler words, right? So it just tells me he's trying to convince me of what he's saying. And then we see, think I'm an odious type of character. Okay, I'm going to tell you this. I know I said it before in previous episodes. People use words for a purpose. They use the words that are in their head. They use words that they're thinking about. So this just tells me that he thinks that he himself is odious. And do you know what odious means? Repulsive. All right, so it's just a word choice. People will choose to use the words that they're thinking. It just tells me that's how he thinks of himself. So let's go on. Again, we see the you know. Awful, actually. So now he's calling himself awful. We see another filler word, both the devil and the saint. And this is what, when Michelle was talking to you guys about his handwriting, I almost hit the floor because she said, it's not me, it's the devil inside me, because you saw the devil's fork in his handwriting. Well, clearly it totally backs up and corroborates what I see in his statements. He thinks of himself as the devil, because why would a person say that, right? So here we have the devil and the saint. And remember when I said in the beginning that he was going back and forth between blaming the women and then apologizing? It's that dichotomy, right? The good angel and the bad angel. So let's go on. Yes, I am innocent. Now, that's a breaking apart contraction, so it could be a little convincing technique, but I want to further go on. And although it is, okay, what is it? What is it? And then he has a word slip, as we see right here. He goes to start one sentence and he stops and picks up another different sentence. So that just tells me there's something you didn't want to say there and you're correcting yourself. So yes, I am innocent. And although it is, this is a horrible tragedy with many, many people being hurt. I think the main thrust of this has been the oppression, but really a different issue. And we'll go on in a minute. So take a look at this. Many people being hurt. We call that passive voice. I can't tell you how many times that I will read a witness statement and be able to pick out the lie based on passive voice. Liars like to write in passive voice. Truth tellers like to write in active voice. And then we have this word. So if you remember Michelle's handwriting analysis again, what did she see in that symbol, right? And I think Susan saw it too. Phallic symbols. So it's very interesting that he chooses to use this word thrust, the main thrust of this. It's just odd. It just tells me where his mind is. But really, as you guys know, the but negates everything before it, and it's a convincing technique. Really, right? The different issue, which is hard for me to express. There is a horrible injustice here. And whether you think I'm the devil or not, the justice process has to be examined, which is hard for me to express. Why is it hard, Keith Raniere? Why would this be hard for you to express? Oh, because it has nothing to do with why you're on trial. How about that? And then again, we see the devil. The truth is hidden within our words. People use words for a purpose. It may be unwitting to them. They may not have any idea, and it may be at an unconscious level. But here's what I'm telling you. You have a person who is now considering himself and calling himself odious and the devil, because he is. And so we look at this. I am the devil. The truth is hidden within our words. You just have to look for it. I apologize for my participation in all of this, the pain, suffering. I've clearly participated. I've been the leader of the community. Okay, participated. Wow, it sounds so nice, doesn't it? We call that a little softening of a language. Keith, what did you really do? Sex trafficking, forced labor, forced sex, sex with minors, branding people. But he wants to call it participation. All right, so overall, he takes no accountability for the criminal activities he has committed, the sex exploitation of a child, possession of child pornography with regard to a minor, sex trafficking, identity thefts, trafficking of labor and services, forced labor, conspiracy to alter records for use in official proceedings, racketeering, conspiracy, and wire fraud conspiracy. That's a lot of stuff. And he uses the word devil twice and refers to himself as odious. So I truly believe that Keith Raniere thinks of himself as the devil, and so do we. So I hope you guys have enjoyed this little statement analysis on Keith Raniere's statements. We'll take it back to the profilers. Okay, thank you, ladies. And don't forget, all of you, if you like what you are seeing and hearing, please subscribe to our channel. You can also become a member of our Patreon subscription-based service, and you get special access to training. You get to go behind the scenes with us, and sometimes you can win some pretty cool stuff, to include a personal one-on-one coaching session with one of us. As always, we enjoy hearing from all of you, and we really try hard to respond to all of your comments. We ask you guys to respect each other and keep it classy at all times. So I'm going to sign off for tonight's episode. From all of us to all of you, be safe and good night.
We love you.
Love you.
See you tonight.